Hi, everyone. This is Traci Fenton, founder of WorldBlu. It's great to be with you. Today, we're going to talk about the power question practice, 5 steps to overcoming fear for breakthrough innovation and success. How would you lead yourself and others if you weren't afraid of failing? If you weren't afraid of what others thought of you? If you weren't afraid of doing the right thing, having the hard conversations, and making the tough decisions? In short, how would you lead yourself and others if you weren't afraid? Many of us lead ourselves and others, whether it's our team, our family, or an entire organization, from a mindset of fear each day, and we don't even realize it. This mindset of fear comes at a great cost to our emotional well-being, the level of harmony we have in our relationships, our creativity, and our ability to take successful action. Just look at what fear has done to our world. All of the fear has recently totally shut us down. We're at a standstill. We're stuck. And it's costing us economically, socially, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. That's what a mindset of fear does on an individual level, all the way up to a global level. But what if you could instead operate from a mindset of freedom and possibility rather than fear and control? What new breakthroughs would you have? What exciting new decisions would you make? What fresh new actions would you take? How much more freedom would you feel in your life, in the way that you lead and in the way that you think? A lot. We typically think great leaders are either born, a product of having the right education and upbringing, a prestigious title, or having the right leadership skills. It can feel challenging at times if you feel like you don't have some or any of these things. But the reality is that great leaders aren't born. How you were raised or where you went to school doesn't matter. Neither does the title you may or may not have, or even your leadership skills. The reality is that being a great leader starts with having a freedom-centered mindset. What's a freedom-centered mindset, you may ask? It's a mindset of possibility rather than limitation, a mindset of creativity rather than stagnation, a mindset of freedom rather than fear. The problem is most of us aren't self-aware enough to realize that we're operating each day in a mindset of fear and control rather than freedom and possibility. For example, how many of you listening to this presentation have ever felt stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed? Maybe you've gotten angry, shut down, or completely disengaged. Perhaps you've turned to unhealthy foods or unhealthy actions to try and deal with life. All of those actions are actually the symptoms and masks of fear. So how do you learn how to recognize the fear in your own thinking so that you don't inadvertently lead yourself and others from a place of fear and limitation as well? That's what I'm going to teach you in this presentation today. I used to operate in fear until all of that changed with one powerful question. Let me tell you my story. When I was in my mid-20s, I was living in Washington, D.C. I had just started WorldBlu. I was also working on the side for the NASDAQ stock market. I was traveling all the time. I had a very, very overwhelming schedule. And one day I called a new spiritual mentor of mine, rang her up on the phone, and sort of poured my heart out to her about everything I was concerned about and stressed out about and overwhelmed about. And she listened very patiently till finally, when I was done sort of spewing out everything, she just said one question to me. She goes, "Traci, I just want to ask you one thing." I'm thinking, what? One thing? What? She goes, "One question. What would you do if you weren't afraid? What would you do if you weren't afraid? How would you solve your problems? What conversations would you have? What next steps would you take if you weren't afraid?" And that question just blew my mind because it was like instantly I knew what I would do. I instantly knew how I would solve those problems. And from that point forward, I took that question, and in my mind, I started calling it the power question. Because when we're in fear, we're not in our power. But when we're thinking from that place of fearlessness, of freedom and possibility, that's when we get put back into our power. And that's why I call this the power question practice, which I'll be teaching you. So now, before I teach you the daily practice that I developed to help you recognize and overcome the fear in your thinking so that you can shift your mindset in an instant from fear to freedom and possibility, leading yourself and others to new levels of success, we have to address 3 major myths about our mindset. The first myth is that your mindset doesn't really matter. But the truth is, your mindset determines the entire direction of your life. The way you think determines the quality of your decisions, relationships, your beliefs, and your behavior. If you think from a mindset of fear, you'll make bad, short-sighted decisions that will increase the level of stress, inharmony, and chaos in your life. Not understanding the power of your mindset will impact the quality of your relationships, health, finances, team, family, and organization. It will impact your level of peace and stop you from fulfilling your purpose and potential. The reality is that a freedom-centered mindset creates the optimal conditions to make better decisions, act with courage and conviction, stand in your inherent worth, break through limitations, lead others successfully, and experience more joy, peace, and prosperity in all that you do, my friend. That's why it's imperative that you understand that your mindset will determine the direction of your life, positively or negatively. The second myth is I'm not afraid, right? Sometimes when we have someone say to you, what are you afraid of? Our ego flares up and we say, I'm not afraid. But the truth is, most of us are afraid and we don't even realize it. According to the Cleveland Clinic and the National Science Foundation, the average person thinks around 60,000 thoughts a day. And a whopping 95% of those thoughts are the exact same thoughts we had the day before. And a staggering 80% of our thoughts are negative and fear-based. So yes, we are afraid most of the time, and some of us know it and some of us don't. Some of us are willing to admit it and some of us aren't. And this unconscious fear can cost us throughout our life. What are some of the symptoms of fear so that we can better recognize fear in our life? Well, fear looks like stress, micromanagement, anger, bullying, hierarchy, fiefdoms, anxiety. It looks like sexism and racism, distrust, bureaucracy, command and control behavior, information hoarding, procrastination, silence, manipulation, disengagement, poor communication, numbness. These are all symptoms of fear, and there's many more. Have you ever experienced any of these symptoms of fear? I'm sure you have. Most of us have, myself included. According to an article published in the Harvard Business Review, the most common fears for CEOs and executive leaders are being seen as incompetent, underachieving, appearing too vulnerable, being politically attacked by colleagues, and appearing foolish. And these top 5 fears resulted in these key dysfunctional behaviors: a lack of honest conversations, too much political game playing, silo-based thinking, a lack of ownership and follow-through, and tolerating bad behaviors. Have you ever seen those behaviors on your team or organization? I bet you have. I know many of us have. So overall, the CEOs and top leaders found that there were over 500 negative consequences from fear in the workplace. including poor decision making, focusing on survival rather than growth, inducing bad behavior the next level down, and failing to act unless there's a crisis. That's why it's important to understand that most of us have fear. Not the kind of fear that tells you not to walk down a dark alley alone at night. That's not the kind of fear we're talking about here. But the kind of fear that keeps you from achieving your fullest potential and purpose. That's why we need to become more aware of the fear in our thinking so that we can address it and overcome it. And that brings me to the last myth, which is this: fear is a great motivator. Well, the truth is that freedom, not fear, is the ultimate motivator. Many people like to say to me, if I weren't afraid of negative consequences, I'd never get anything done. Fear motivates me. But the brain research tells us that when we are in a state of fear, the peripheries of our brain shut down and we literally get tunnel vision. In other words, when we are in fear, we become dumb. So while you might think fear is your friend or a great motivator, the reality is that fear limits your ability to see the full range of possibilities available to you. And consequently, your decisions suffer. The best long-term motivator isn't fear. It's living your purpose for your life. And that's something we teach at WorldBlu. We teach how to figure out what your purpose and vision is for your life. Let your purpose motivate you instead of fear. So how do we shift our mindset from fear to freedom and possibility? Well, I spent 15 years figuring this out, and now I'm going to teach you the shortcut so that you can overcome your fears faster, more easily, and with breakthrough results, and help others do the same. It's called the power question practice. Here's how it works. I would like you to grab a piece of paper, grab your notebook, grab your phone, and I'd like you to think of a challenge that you're facing at work or at home right now. It can be a financial challenge. It can be a conversation that you need to have with someone that you don't want to have. It can be a relationship challenge. It can be an issue with a spouse or a child. It could be a challenge of you're not really doing what you want to do in life. You're not really being able to pursue your dreams. So I want you to think of a very concrete challenge that you're dealing with right now. We all have challenges. We're all dealing with them. Take a moment, and I want you to think of what that challenge is, okay? Get that really clear in your mind. All right. Now, again, like I said, it can be a relationship issue, a decision you need to make, a conversation you need to have, or a new opportunity that you're considering. So, do you have a challenge in your mind? All right, good. Next, I'm going to walk you through the 5 questions of the power question practice. You can write your answers down to these questions as we go along, please. And I will give you a little bit of time on each question. So just as I'm talking, I want you to write down your answers to these questions. The first question is, what are you afraid of? So I want you to think about the challenge that you're thinking of. And in relation to that challenge, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of failure? Are you afraid of losing money? Are you afraid of what others will think of you or their opinions? Are you afraid that you don't know how to do what you need to do? Are you afraid of relationship issues? Are you afraid of having to be alone? Are you afraid of having to step up to a higher level? Are you afraid that someone won't be supportive if you make a different decision? Are you afraid that someone will react negatively? I want you to get really clear and think through, what exactly are you afraid of regarding this challenge? So just write it down if you would. What are you afraid of? Try to go deep. Really uncover and peel back the layers of the onion here. So what are you afraid of? Okay, let's go to the next question. Question 2 in the power question practice. Why are you afraid? So again, think about the challenge. You've identified what you're afraid of. Now, why are you afraid? Are you afraid because maybe you're projecting into the future a potential fear? 80% of what we worry about never happens. So why are you afraid? Is it something that happened in the past that you're projecting into the future? Are you speculating about something? Are you afraid because of past experiences not going well? Why exactly are you afraid? Go ahead and write that down if you would, please. Okay, the next question is the power question, which is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? How would you solve that challenge? What conversations would you have? What next steps would you take? What actions? What new opportunities would you go for? What new boundaries would you create? What would you ask for more of or less of if you weren't afraid? I want you to really get clear here. Really get clear of what would you do if you weren't afraid. And of course, I'm not talking here about reckless fearlessness. This isn't the time to run into your boss's office and flip them the bird. This is the time for you to really think through in a positive and constructive way. What would you do? What actions would you take? What new thoughts would you think if you weren't afraid? So again, get really clear about what you would do here. Sometimes we're so wedded to our fear that it's hard for us to think beyond it. It's hard for us to think about what we would do if we weren't afraid. But I really want to challenge you to think this through. I've had so many breakthroughs in my life with the power question practice. And sometimes it surprises me. Now, you don't want to override your intuition here. Whatever you think of what you would do if you weren't afraid should resonate with your heart, with your gut. Don't override your intuition. Don't override your head. Go with your gut. Go with what you know is right. This isn't the time to, sell your jewelry and run off with the pool boy. That's not what we're going for here. But it's genuinely, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Okay, got your answer to that? Okay, the fourth question is, how would you feel without the fear? How would you feel? I think a lot of us would feel, a huge sigh of relief, or we'd feel energized, we'd feel excited. I know when I feel afraid, I feel really heavy and burdened. And then when I break through the fear, it's just like the energy just rushes back into me. So how would you feel without the fear? Write down the words that come to you. Would you feel joyous? Would you feel peaceful? Liberated? Energized? Would you feel, big sigh of relief? How would you feel without the fear? Okay, my friends, the last question is this. Why is it okay to let the fear go? Why is it okay to let the fear go? For me, I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in God. I think of God as love. So when I let things go, I'm letting it go to God to figure it out. I'm letting it go to divine love to figure it out. And maybe that's how you feel too. It's about trusting the universe is good. It's about trusting that there's a higher plan for you, whatever it may be. And if you're not spiritually minded, that's cool too. Maybe for you, you can let the fear go because you know what? I had these challenges in the past or similar challenges. I worked it out. I'm going to work it out again this time. I believe in myself. I'm confident. Whatever it is, but this last question is very, very important. We all like to say, okay, just, let stuff go, or like the Frozen song, right? Let it go. But it's really hard to let things go, and it's hard to let fear go if you don't understand what you're letting it go to, right? You've got to understand, what are you letting it go to? So in your own heart right now, I just want you to think, why is it okay to let the fear go? All right, so again, the power question practice, we've been through these 5 questions, and I hope you found your answers. What are you afraid of? Why are you afraid? What would you do if you weren't afraid? How would you feel without the fear? And why is it okay to let the fear go? These 5 questions comprise the power question practice. This is a practice that we have taught to leaders from 65 countries worldwide. And I can't even tell you the incredible stories and breakthroughs I've heard people have from starting a new business, starting a new career, relationship breakthroughs, great relationship breakthroughs with parents and children, breakthroughs in how people think about themselves. So it's just, you cannot underestimate the power of these 5 questions. And now you have a tool that you will be able to use for the rest of your life. You can use the power question each and every day to help you get unstuck, make better decisions, think longer term, and achieve your dreams and goals. And in fact, at WorldBlu, we have an 8-week course called Fearless Mindset that teaches you how to do all of this. You can also use the power question practice to help others on your team. When someone comes to you upset, instead of trying to fix their problem for them, help them find their answer with the power question practice. You can just say, hey, I've got a new tool. Can I walk you through this process? And, if they're willing, if they're open, go ahead and walk them through it. If they're not, that's okay. But if they are, go for it. Because not addressing the fear in our thinking or helping others do the same only results in more stress, my friends, anxiousness, less patience, crappy, short-sighted decisions, and less joy and happiness. But when we learn how to shift our thinking from fear to freedom with the power question practice, we instantly step back into our power and we can see the bigger picture, make better decisions, and relax a bit. That's the promise of the power question practice. And I encourage you to use these 5 questions each day throughout your life. It's a daily practice for me. So you can bring a freedom-centered mindset to all that you do. When you do that, you will become the kind of indispensable leader others love to work with. And you will create a team or organization that truly excels. Because great things happen when we consciously and intentionally choose freedom over fear in the way that we lead. And I believe that it is your sacred right to be able to live, lead, and think from a place of freedom rather than fear in all that you do.